Welcome, Crossing family. So glad you're here worshiping with us today. My name is Jordan Henry, and I'm excited for the last week of our Ghosts of Christmas series. Make sure you jump in the chat and say hi. I'd love the opportunity to talk with you. Pastor Clayton has an amazing message prepared for us, but first, let's jump into some worship.
You are the one that is faithful. You are the one that is able to give us strength, to give us help in our trials. You are the only one, you are the only one. Our hope is found in you, Lord. Your unfailing love's endless, endless. Our sure and firm foundation. You are the only one. 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 You are the one that is worthy. You are the one that's deserving of all the praise, of all the honor and glory. You are the only one. You are the only one. Our hope is found in you, Lord. Your unfailing love's endless, endless. Our sure and firm foundation. You are the only one. 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 Oh, what a joy to trust in you, Jesus, every moment, every day. Peace that surpasses all understanding, every moment, every day. Oh, what a joy to trust in you, Jesus, every moment, every day. Peace that surpasses all understanding, every moment, every day. Every day.
Proverbs 14:12 records these words: "There is a way that seems right to man, but in the end, it leads to death." What if the road we are traveling and the direction we are headed is leading us in the exact opposite direction of where we were intended to go and intended to be? What if it's taking us to the wrong place? Nobody intends to get lost. Nobody wants to lose their way, but it can happen to absolutely every single one of us. This is what it says in Matthew chapter 7. "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." It is easy to find the wrong road, and it is hard to find the right one. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look into our future, not just collectively as a church, but as individuals. And we're going to take a hard look at that future and make sure we are headed in the right direction, that we are going through the narrow gate, that we are on the narrow road. And that is why I am so happy that all of you are joining us from all of our different locations. We're glad that you're here. We hope that this service will be of value to you. To those of you who are watching online, I want to welcome you as well. Our .tv family, I want to welcome you. A special shout out to those of you who are part of the Crossing Inside. I had an incredible opportunity to hang out with you guys this past week, and you got to know you were just unbelievably refreshing to be around, to hear what God's doing in your life, to celebrate the wins that are happening in your life, and then to be able to go out among your peers inside of the West Illinois Correctional Facility and give you guys all Christmas gifts. I love you. Merry Christmas. And the whole church is going to be clapping right now as we wish you a Merry Christmas, just so that you know we love you. I mean it. It is one of the most enjoyable days of ministry for me. It doesn't require a lot. It's just so good just to be on the inside and see what God's doing. We just simply see how many baptisms are happening. But I'm telling you, I have comrades in there. Men that are discipling other inmates who are baptizing their friends, and they're just incredible. I wish I could take you all in there. We could all go to prison together for a little bit. It'd be good for us all. But we really do. We love you, and we're so thankful for you. Before I jump all the way into the message, don't worry, we'll get to that later. Some of you guys are freaking out. But hey, Christmas Eve is happening at all of our locations, and at many of our locations, Christmas Eve is happening. And we're going to get a little bit more into maybe why we should be doing some inviting and some reaching out later on in this message. But if you want to find out all the service times, you can go to thecrossing.net/Christmas. We're expecting a record number of people to be walking in our doors and hearing a presentation of the gospel and hearing about the love of Jesus Christ. And so as you guys are contemplating your Christmas plans, if you've got to be with grandma at her place tomorrow, we'd love to have you at one of our locations. If your location has a Sunday service, and then we're going to have multiple services. In fact, we're going to have over 30 Christmas services at our physical location and over 12 services through our online location. So we're going to be, it's going to be busy. And then I've already promised my kids they have to be on best behavior, because we're going to let them open a Christmas Eve gift, because if you're going to Christmas Eve service, you have to have a Christmas Eve gift. It'll be a toothbrush. All right, I'm not going to go into those jokes. All right, now, we've been going through this series looking at the life of Ebenezer Scrooge as described in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and we've been noticing our Scrooge-like tendencies, and there have been 3 sentences that we've been talking about that kind of define Ebenezer Scrooge. The first one is that he was dismissive of his past, and we learned from Jerry that recognizing that even though the past can't be changed, with Christ's help, we can change. And that was such an incredible message, and we believe that as a church, that when Christ comes into your life, he can change you for the good and he can change you forever. That's what gets us all excited. And then last week, I talked about being blind to present circumstances, and we can all be blind to our present circumstances. And the takeaway was, we want God to act in spite of us while God chooses to act through us. Well, after I got done preaching on Sunday, I'm home and I'm starting to go through my messages and checking up on all the people who sent me stuff while I was up here. And I got one from a dear family in Macomb who used to be in small group with me when we were up there. We vacation with them after men's conference gets over every summer down at the Ozarks. So I'm seeing this. I'm looking forward to be, uplifted and encouraged. Well, they had their oldest son sit with them during last week's service. And they got in the car, and like good parents, they're like, so what did you learn in church today? And he says, I think going to a restaurant and acting like a blind person sounds really fun. And before I get upset with him, this is what happens at all of our locations. No matter how hard Jerry and I might try to drive home, this point, another point is what you take home. So that's why I'm putting these up there so you at least know what target we were actually trying to hit. Well, the last one that we're going to be dealing with, and we're going to be dealing with it today, is Ebenezer was unconcerned with his future. And I wonder how many of us could relate to that. We are unconcerned with our future. Well, here's the overview of what happened. As soon as the ghost of Christmas present left Ebenezer Scrooge's night, the ghost of Christmas yet to come entered. He was a dark figure, shrouded in black, faceless except for fire-like eyes, and he takes Ebenezer Scrooge on a journey, leading him, and he looks more like the angel of death or the grim reaper than he does someone that you would want to hang out with. And he moves him through these 5 scenes in Ebenezer's life. The first place that he takes Ebenezer Scrooge is to the stock exchange. As soon as Ebenezer shows up, he goes, oh, this is a place I understand. This is where profit is valued above all. And he goes over to some rich and influential businessmen, and he overhears their discussion as they talk about a man who they refer to as Old Scratch and how he has recently passed away. And they ask the question, who will get all of this rich man's money? And he says, we don't know. There was nobody in his life. Well, is anybody going to go to his funeral? I doubt it. So a man of considerable means, considerable wealth, considerable influence dies, and no one is going to get all the money and his fortune that he has amassed, and nobody is going to be at his funeral. He's just going to die and be alone. Then we're taken to a shanty of a rag and bone man, the house of a guy who sells unwanted household items. And 3 people step into this rag and bone man's house: an undertaker, a maid, and a cleaning lady, each of them carrying items that they have stolen from what appears to be this man named Old Scratch. Here are the things that they've taken: buttons off of a sleeve, a brooch, towels, bed curtains, sheets, boots. And then worst of all, one of them actually has this silk shirt that she took off the corpse of the dead man that he was supposed to be buried in. They're not nervous about getting caught because nobody's going to be at this man's funeral. Nobody cares about this man. Then they zoom out and they take you to a young couple on a street as a woman holds their baby, and her husband is talking to her and saying this man has died, and the relief it brings this family knowing that this man's death brings them financial relief. And then I believe we're taken to the toughest scene of all. If you remember from last week, or maybe you remember from the story, it's hard not to see Bob Cratchit around the table with his family and not fall in love with him and his wife and his kids, and especially Tiny Tim, who's sick. And you'll remember from the story, when Ebenezer Scrooge is taken around by the ghost of Christmas present, he sees Tiny Tim's condition and he says, is this boy's fate sealed? Is he going to die? And the ghost of Christmas present says, not unless the future remains unaltered. Well, there The ghost of Christmas yet to come, shrouded in black, takes Ebenezer into the home as the family is mourning the death of Tiny Tim. And Ebenezer, along with ourselves, come to the realization that the future remained unaltered, that nothing changed for Tiny Tim and what it looks like if nothing changes in the life of Ebenezer Scrooge. And then he's taken to the last place. He's taken to a cemetery, dark, gloomy, weeds creeping up over the tombstone. And there Ebenezer stands looking at the tombstone over the grave, and the ground beneath him gives way, and he realizes that this is not just any tomb, it's his. The casket breaks open to reveal himself in there, and he is terrified because Ebenezer Scrooge sees the result of the end. He sees what it's like to look into your future and to be unconcerned. And it is this moment that creates so much change in Ebenezer's life. How much time have you spent thinking about your future? How much time have you spent thinking about what it looks like when you die? Have you figured out what kind of casket you're going to be in? Are you going to get cremated? I do a lot of funerals. And I've kind of learned some things along the way that I'm just going to pass along to you. And I'm going to tell you this. We're going to laugh for just a little bit, and then we'll get a little bit more serious. But I think when you die, you can get away with just about anything. Like everybody's going to say yes. Like one of the things that I want to do is I want to pick all the people that I'm close to that are horrible singers and have them sing a special for me at my funeral. Because you know they're not going to say no, and they know that they're horrible. But I want you to sing it anyway. And I'm going to pick like Whitney Houston level songs. So they're just buried from the start. I don't know what kind of casket I'm going to get, but I'm going to get the heaviest one. And I don't know where they're going to place me, but I'm going to find a place where the hearse parks the furthest away, and I'm going to pick a hilly cemetery, and I'm going to get one at the top of the hill. And then I'm going to have all my little CrossFitter friends who've been skinny their whole lives carry me to my final resting place. It's going to be one, they're going to call it the Clayton when it's all done. You've heard of the Murph, that's the Clayton, right? And I'm telling you, I'm going to be big when they have to carry me, really big. Because I'm thinking if the Lord could take me to 75, I'd be very happy. And if I make it to 70, I'm going to throw all care to the wind. Short sell the stock at McDonald's, because when I am 70, I'm going to town, big time. I'm going to get real big. And I make jokes about my weight or about eating, and then I get messages from you guys with like all kinds of like things that I need to be aware of. So I want to set the record straight about who I am as a child of God. First of all, right now it is healthier in our country to eat a donut than it is to eat lettuce. Am I right? That's exactly right. Heavy-set people are not in the hospital right now. There's no recall at Dunkin' Donuts. It's just not happening. But to those of you who are salad eaters, beware. Be very afraid. Second thing, I've looked at animals that eat nothing but grass. They eat lettuce, cows, elephants, rhinoceros. Those are some of the biggest, fattest animals on planet Earth. And if I were to adopt this lettuce diet that you guys propose online, I couldn't buy clothes big enough for me, which is why I eat meat. The second reason why I eat meat is because these animals are eating our planet. They are destroying the very planet that we are trying to preserve. These are eco-terrorists. And we need to acknowledge that now as a church and as a community of believers. Why do I eat meat? Because I am killing the things that are destroying our planet. Let me take this to a next step for those of you who are not yet on my bandwagon. These plants produce oxygen that my kids' kids would like to breathe one day. And every time I allow them to live, they are stealing the very oxygen that my younger children will one day want to breathe. So on behalf of them, I eat meat. The takeaway from this sermon could be, eat meat, save the planet. And some of you, that's what will happen. But here's the real takeaway. You ready? Everybody should live with the end in mind because the end is just the beginning. If the central emotion of the ghost of Christmas past is regret, if only I had done things differently in my past, things would have been different in my present and in my future. If the central emotion of the ghost of Christmas present is that of apathy and cynicism, where our hearts are no longer moved by the plight and the pain of people around us, and we're cynical about their motives and their situation, the greatest emotion of all is evoked in the ghost of Christmas yet to come. It's a carnal emotion. It's fear. And there's no way to slice it when we start thinking about the end. For so many of us, fear is inescapable. Because just like Ebenezer comes to grips with the reality of a life lived on his own terms, we have to recognize what is going to happen when we die. For some of you, it's the fear of being alone. Because you didn't invest in people, because you didn't care about people, because you didn't love well, you eventually reap what you sowed through your life. And in your final days, you're worried that you're going to be in a room somewhere surrounded by no one that you know. That you will pay the price of a life lived on your own terms instead of investing it for others. Some of you, it's the fear of being forgotten. That they'll bury you and they'll say nice things about you at your funeral, but it won't take long after the ham and cheese sandwiches at your funeral brunch that people stop talking about you altogether. Oh, they might come visit from time to time and see you at the cemetery, but for the vast majority of people, your life, your legacy, everything that you were will fade like a mist. And for others of us, it's the fear of consequences, the reckoning of a life lived the way we wanted it to be. And not just the consequences that we will bear when we're gone, but the consequences of the people that we will leave behind, that they will have to carry because of how we lived our life and how we chose to honor God or not honor Him, to love others or not love them. Here's a tough question. Who is going to miss you when you're gone? And what would they actually say at your funeral? If they were being honest. Who are you sure will be there? And who are you sure are thankful that you lived and that you invested in their life? But these fears are not the greatest fear. The greatest fear is the one that very few of us have because we don't recognize what's actually going to happen. But Jesus says this, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. The greatest fear is not what happens when you die. The greatest fear is what happens after you die. So what happens after you die? I mean, you can pick out really cool pillows and really cool insides. Here's what you need to know. You will never be in there. You will never be in there. The Bible teaches us that when we die, our soul, our personality, our essence of who we are is actually ripped from our body. It's separated. That your physical body is left behind, but your soul goes on to another place. We are all eternal beings. Whether you go to heaven or whether you go to hell, you will go there forever. You will never see the inside of this. You will never be lowered in. Just the body where you once resided. Like a car you traded in at the dealership, you will leave that behind and go to a new place. And whatever happens to that car, you'll never see it or experience it. Just like whatever happens to your physical body, you will not see it or experience it. After we are separated from our body, we go to the white throne. Revelation chapter 20. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. Earth and sky fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books. If anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. And at this point, you should be asking this question, well then, how do I get myself my name in the book of life? Great question. Let me tell you how you do that. You get your name in the book of life when you begin an intimate personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's why you hear us talk about that all the time here at the Crossing. That when you start that intimate personal relationship with Jesus Christ, the book of life is open and your name is written in it. And this is what happens is you start that intimate personal relationship when you go, you know what? I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and that he died on my behalf and he lived a life I could never live. He paid the price that I owe. And then you move beyond that to taking a step of faith and beginning that faith journey in the waters of baptism. That's why you see our church celebrate the baptisms that happened all around at all of our different locations. And we surrender control. Paul says it this way, I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Instead of dying on this day, we choose our death in advance. We die to ourselves and we say, from here on out, I'm ready to live for Jesus. I'm gonna let him be in control of my life. I'm gonna do the things that he wants me to do, not by my own power, not by my own strength, but by his power and by his strength. And then what happens is we take hold of that belief through faith. And that faith is lived out by the way you and I interact with others and the way we follow Jesus. If you're thinking, I can believe something over here and not do anything about it in my life, that's not true faith. Faith is involved in works. In other words, how we behave impacts how we believe. For James says, and James was the brother of Jesus, that faith without works is dead. So you and I, when we decide that we want to start that intimate personal relationship with Jesus, when we decide that we're ready to put him in charge of our life by his power and by his strength, when we're obedient in the area of baptism and we start that relationship there, and then when we live out the things that God calls us to, we're taking hold of that relationship. Our name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And so when they open it up, they're gonna go, you said Hentzel? I'm like, yeah, H-E-N-T-Z. There's a Z in there. And it won't be like when you call the Comcast operator and they keep getting it wrong. They'll know exactly where you are. They'll flip to it and they'll see Clayton Hentzel. And they'll see your name if you have it. And one of the greatest gifts you could ever give anybody in your family is the knowledge that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. It's the greatest gift. You want to know about intense pain. There is nothing like people at a funeral asking me whether or not you're in heaven or not. Don't make me answer that question. I can't. I can't know another person's heart. But what you could do is you could live a life in front of them. You could make it clear to them that your relationship with Jesus Christ is solid, and you could give them the assurance that you're gonna be in heaven, which means that if they choose to have that exact same relationship, you can tell them that you will see them again in heaven. Because the Bible says in heaven, we will be fully known and will fully know. There will be no introductions there. I will know you and you will know me. After we go to the great white throne, we go to another place, 2 Corinthians 5:10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. So I'm getting into heaven, and I'm not exactly sure what he's gonna do about all the bad things, but I'm very sure about what he's gonna do about all the good things. He's gonna reward you. He is gonna reward you for all the things that you did that were good, that while you lived here on earth. There will be rewards that happen in heaven. In fact, the Bible talks about a bunch of different rewards. Like you will be rewarded if you. The Father will reward you if you. For all kinds of things you will be rewarded. So and who doesn't like an award? And you'll be there in heaven. They'll find your name in the Lamb's Book of Life. You'll be like, okay, you can go to heaven, which is great news. You get there, and then all of a sudden, Jesus is standing there, and he's handing out trophies. And he's like, hey, here's your trophy. And you're like, well, what's this trophy for? And then he hands you another trophy, and he's like, well, what's this trophy for? And then he hands you another award, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna need one of those little red flyer carts to carry all my heaven trophies. Actually, you're gonna go, why am I getting all of these, Jesus? And he's like, oh, you don't know? Clayton, I was hungry. And you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was in prison, and you visited me. I was naked, and you clothed me. And I'm gonna be like, Jesus, I never saw you naked. Wait, how'd that happen? And he's gonna say, Clayton, whatever you did to one of the least of these, you did it unto me. For some of you out there, he's gonna go, I was cold, and you gave me a coat. Just an offhanded statement that we made last week, and at all of our locations right now, we've given over 50 coats away to kids that are cold because of you guys, because of you. We had people giving money at thrift stores. We had people making calls. We had people going to stores and buying coats. And when you get to heaven, Jesus is gonna be like, yeah, you've got 2 awards coming. He's gonna reward you. Here's the other thing. There's not just stuff that you get in heaven, there's stuff you can take there. Did you know that? My whole life, I've been told, Clayton, you can't take it with you. Which there's a lot of things you can't take. You can't take your house. You wouldn't want it anyway. The ones there, way more efficient. You can't take your car. You can't take your farm. It just doesn't get to go with you. You can't take your stock options. You can't take your job. You can't take your position. You can't take your 401k. You can't take your bank. You can't. There's so many things you can't take. But you can take things. Jesus tells us so much. He says this in Matthew chapter 6. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus actually tells you and me, we can take stuff. We can send it ahead. Like I could go, hey, yeah, instead of keeping this down here where moth and rust destroy, I'm actually gonna send this on to heaven. So what can you take? What can you take to heaven with you? People. People. You can take people with you. And parents, isn't that where your heart is with your kids? Isn't that where your heart is with your friends and your family? We're getting ready to spend unbelievable amounts of money on people that we are marginally okay with because we love them. We don't like them, but we love them. That is where your treasure is. It's with people. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get in heaven, and you're going to get introduced to your treasure. Someone's going to walk up to you, and they're going to say, you might not remember me, but my family was going through a real hard time, and we showed up for one of the Christmas Eve services, and you were out in the cold parking cars, and your smile was all we needed to know that this was the right place to be. And that night changed the whole course of my family. I got a message on Facebook that a guy came to our church last year on December 30th, and to hear about how much his life has changed in the course of 1 year. And so many of those stories are going to be written across all of our locations in the next 2 days. You'll be up there and some kid is going to walk up to you and go, you might not remember me, but I used to be in your elementary room back in Crossing Kids. And my dad got moved to a job out on the West Coast, but you were the first person to tell me about Jesus and that he loved me and that he had a purpose and plan for my life, and I never forgot it. Years later, I cashed the check that you kind of wrote in my heart and in my life, and in college, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. And not only did I come to Christ, but eventually my entire family came to Christ. And I don't know if you ever remembered who I was, and you'll be like, oh, I remember you leaving and wondering what happened to you. And in heaven, you will find out where your treasure was. But listen to me, it will not just be the people that you interacted with personally. It will be all the people that were impacted through you, through the people that you impacted. You will be the head of a family tree that will sprawl out for generations. Hundreds of thousands of millions of people impacted by one small act of kindness. Multiple acts of service and sacrifice. And when you are in heaven and you are standing in front of people's lives that have been impacted that could fill the city of Chicago, you will realize what your treasure is. Your treasure was people. Ebenezer was given the opportunity and given the time to change. So one of the big takeaways from this is if your life is not going in the direction it's supposed to, if you're not living the life that God called you to, if you are listening to my voice right now, there is still time to change. Don't miss it. Don't skip out on that gift that he has for each and every single one of you. You could begin your relationship with Jesus Christ today. You could write your name in the Lamb's Book of Life today. There's no reason to put it off. You could replace the fear that you have of death with the love of Christ. This is what it says in 1 John. Perfect love drives out fear. The love of Christ can drive out the fear of death. If some of you are out there and you're going, man, I don't know where I stand. I don't know what's going on in my heart. I don't know what would happen if I die. You can resolve that fear today by allowing the love of Jesus Christ into your life. And for so many of you, I want to encourage you guys to start laying up for yourself treasure in heaven. We're moving to a time of decision. At all of our different locations, as we move into this time of decision, I want to push hard in just a few areas. There's some of you listening to my voice that you're going, there's just not much time left. Some of the people you care about, some of the people that you love, or maybe even yourself, there's not much time left. There's more life in the rearview mirror than there is in the windshield. But I want to tell you that little is much if God's in it. He can take the small amount of time that you have left or the small amount of time that you have over this Christmas season to take huge ground in your life and in the life of the people that you love and that you care about. Even though there's not much time left, if God's a part of it, something amazing and miraculous can happen. I think about the thief on the cross. He had almost no time left. He's being crucified, and it just so happens he's being crucified next to Jesus. He's going to die very soon. And he turns, in just one small act of faith, he says, Jesus, remember me. And Jesus, while he's dying on the cross, turns to him and says, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Wasn't much time left, but it was all the time he needed. And the thief on the cross, when he is in heaven, you know what his treasure is going to be? How many people have been impacted by his story? That's his reward. His reward will not have been much on earth, but his reward in heaven will be great. Because there'll be some of you, even at our own locations today, that will go, that's who I am. There's not much time left, but I'm placing what I have left in his hands. And I want to encourage you guys to do it. If you've never started an intimate personal relationship with Jesus, if you've never been obedient in the area of baptism, in just a few moments, I'm going to pray, and the people around you are going to stand up and they're going to start singing. And you've seen it happen before, but you've always thought it's for somebody else. But today it's for you. And as they start singing, I'm going to encourage you to come up to the front. And there'll be people on the side of the stage that would love to talk with you about how to begin that relationship, because you could start it right now. You could start it today. There's some of you, if you were to be honest, you've been doing way more laying up for yourself treasures on earth than laying up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And today it's time for us to make that change, for us to make that pivot. Hear me, there's a very real chance that you're walking on the wide road and not the narrow one. The wide road is congested. It's where everybody goes. The narrow road is different, and few find it. And what I want to encourage you guys to do is maybe come up here to the steps and get down on your knees and just say, God, I need to make a change. Help me to find the narrow road. Help me to walk through the narrow gate. For those of you here that you have people in your life that you love and that they don't have an intimate personal relationship with Jesus, I'm going to encourage you guys at all of our locations to come up and just get down on your knees and pray that God would open a door, give you the courage and give you the faith to make an invite to maybe a Christmas Eve service, or to give you the courage to have a conversation with them about what Jesus has been doing in your life. You have no idea how God could use your story to rewrite their story. And I don't want us to miss this. Would you guys stand with me? God, this moment is placed in your loving hands, and there's no place I'd rather put it. And God, I just ask across all of our locations in this moment right now that you would just put your presence in this place. For the sinner and the saint alike, that we would know that you're in here, that you love us, and you're waiting for us to make a move, waiting for us to make a change. God, as we get down here and get down on our knees, I pray that we would experience you, that we be challenged by you, that we be changed by you. And that, God, we begin laying up for ourselves treasures with you. In your name I pray. Amen.
Our names are written in the book of life, and that is the key to our salvation. But without the sacrifice of Jesus, there would be no person to write our names. God wants each and every one of us in that book. He wants us to be in that book so bad that He sent His one and only Son to die on the cross for our sins, so our names could be written in it. We remember that love, that sacrifice every week by taking communion. So together as one church, let's spend some time with God right now.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchase of God. Born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I in my Savior am happy and blessed, watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. Lost in your love. I'm lost in your love. This is my story, and this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. And this is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. And oh, what a Savior song, praising my Savior all the day long.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Everything, Christ in me. This is all I have. This is all I need. This is everything, Christ in me. This is all I have. This is all I need. This is everything, Christ in me. This is all I have. This is all I need. This is everything, Christ in me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you call this your church home and haven't already, click the Give button at the top. Christmas Eve is upon us, and we have a lot of opportunities for you to join us online. On December 24th from noon to midnight, we'll have services beginning every hour on the hour. If you have any questions or just want to continue the conversation, you can email me at jordanh@thecrossing.net. We've got a special trailer to share with you today to give you just a taste of what our Christmas Eve services will be like. Thanks, and have a great week.